Pre-enrollment opportunities will be available at the Best Western Plus University at Moscow, Idaho, in the Latah room. That ends this Friday, May 28th. While walk-ins are accommodated, applicants are encouraged to pre-enroll for that appointment. The Research Fellowship Program, a joint venture between the Pullman Police Department and Washington State University, has been recognized as one of the top 50 innovative and influential projects on an international scale. Smart 50 Awards in partnership with the Smart Cities Connect Foundation, and US Ignite recognize global smart cities projects each year, honoring the most innovative and influential work. Collaboration between Pullman Police Chief Gary Jenkins and Dr. David Macon of the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology in the College of Arts and Sciences at WSU resulted in the development of a unique research fellowship program. The Public Safety Fellowship allows the Pullman Police Department to leverage the research expertise within the criminal justice program while affording a doctoral student a unique opportunity to work on applied research projects like the one who's doing right now on our municipal court benefits. And while the vast majority of law enforcement agencies in the U.S. serve populations of less than 100,000, much of the research centered around law enforcement is conducted in larger agencies, primarily for the benefit of those large agencies. And that research many times is not applicable or easily translatable to smaller agencies. So the Research Fellowship Program provides a model that not only serves to benefit the majority of law enforcement agencies in the U.S., but which also trains a new generation of researchers to conduct basic and applied research that is uniquely tailored to the local context. Again, I want to congratulate our Pullman Police Department and Chief Gary Jenkins for the great work on that grant. Our next item on the agenda tonight.
Glenn?
Yes.
I wanted to go back just real quick to the SWETA grant, Elevate grant. Just wanted to add to that a little bit. I was out today and making some phone calls and working with the folks from SWETA, and there's a lot of people that have not applied for this, and it's a very simple application, and we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. It has to be in by the 1st of June. And so any of you or anyone that knows these small businesses that could apply for this, please reach out to them because the money is sitting there. I was astonished at how many people I contacted today. I got a list that either didn't see an email or it went to someplace else. So it's really important for us to continue to get the word out, physically and verbally. So I just wanted to add that to that.
Great, Al. Thank you very much for that. And again, you have to, like just mentioned again, June 1st, and the sweta.org. You can just go online there and you can get all the details. Or just call Al Sorensen. He'll be more than happy to make sure you get linked up, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Our next item is a presentation night on transit staffing and facility needs with Wayne Thompson, who's our transit director. But also, I'd like to start right off because we've talked about some grants tonight. And Wayne, you just got a grant notification just recently on that third electric bus.
We did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The background behind me is the wrap design that'll be on our first 2 electric buses, which are due to arrive in about 3 weeks. And this notice that Mr. Mayor just referenced is for a third. We just received notice last week, a grant award of $714,000, which is 80% of the cost of electric buses. As soon as I can order it, it'll be about 18 months out. So we're anxious to get the first 2. And very likely this third one, we may go back and look at a water conservation theme on that one as well. So mix it up a bit. But these 2, with the background you see behind me, does emphasize the partnership with WSU, but also the new electric theme. So happy to have the assistance. It'll very likely be federal assistance. We work with the state on this, but always pleased to have the support of the FTA. So with that, I will work into my discussion item. I'm going to share my screen here so you can see the PowerPoint, but I'll tell you first of all, this is going to be a scaled back version. I had intended to talk about facilities And excuse me, can you see the slide there?
Yes, we can, Wayne.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the rough transition here. The intent was to talk about both facilities and staffing tonight, but we need a little more time with some of the details that have come up on staffing. So I'll come back to you in June and we will talk about our staffing needs. But still, the timing for our facility is great. I don't want to see this opportunity pass by. So very similar to the bus grant that I just described, the FTA has what they call the bus and bus facility grant opportunity coming up next month. And it'll be open for about a 3-month window. And the last time we saw this was 18 months ago. So I really don't want to see that opportunity pass. And 18 months ago, we didn't have any draft plans or draft costs at that time. Our facility, which you see there in the middle, is actually in good condition. It's just too small for the number of vehicles we have and for the number of staff that we have. This has been a growing discussion for at least the decade that I've been here, but the current combination of funding, basic no-frills approach to the design, and a very conveniently timed cycle of grant funding suggests that now is the time for us to act. Okay, here's the layout of our current campus, which we share with ERD at the south or the bottom and M&O to the upper right. I'm not going to go through the bullet points. I'll just narrate along with the theme here. But like I said before, I've been advocating for some time. We don't need to replace the facility. We just need to expand it. Our fleet, our service has grown, but our fleet is not. Our staffing has grown, but the office space and the storage space is not, and the garage space has just not kept up with the need. I spent my first 5 years here at Transit in a former meeting room that was converted to an office with no windows, and maybe that explains a few things, but it's not a legitimate office. And our break room and dispatch areas, they're both too small for the time our employees spend in those areas. And roughly a third of our fleet, our vans and our buses, they are outside every night, year round. We just don't have enough. We have 18 spaces in storage, and we have 25 buses right now. The South Fork of the Palouse River is just feet away. If you see on the building tops, this aerial photo A, B, C, probably 30 feet to the left of B is the South Fork of the Palouse River. It's not the gray strip, that's the railroad. The Palouse River is the dark strip just feet away, so we can't go any further west. And we're already parked so close that any hint of a fuel leak or an oil drip, that puts us at risk of violating our industrial stormwater permit. And our last go around, we got the okay to get the permit with the understanding we are going to put these vehicles undercover. We're working towards it, was our promise. So rather than reduce service or the number of vehicles we operate to match the facility size, I am asking that we expand our current garage, which is A. South, you can see where A and B don't meet up. That's because A only holds 35-foot buses. I would like to extend that to the south so A can hold 35 or 40. We're not limited in what gets parked there. We're not limited in what vehicle size we can buy. I would also like to construct a smaller satellite garage just to the north of our main facility, and this will handle all buses that are not currently in A and B, which is 18 total right now. We're looking at the footprint of that building, which would be about where D is on the aerial. And that is currently, you see all the paint stripes, the colors, that's M&O testing the striping machines. We don't want to infringe on what they do. We're aware of some of the concerns they have. So we're looking at some adjustments to the footprint, maybe even putting the vans eventually, if M&O moves eastward across Guy Street, maybe we would inherit a building. And for the time being, the next slide will show the proposed size of the garage. Even a scaled down version would hold all buses and all vans. And we would also expand our office and our break room walls 14 feet to the east. So it would be A going to the right 14 feet. And that count that's on the slide of 25 buses is accurate. With the arrival of those first 2 electrics, we will be getting rid of 2 diesel buses. That's the big argument we use in writing these grants, is that we are trying to replace on the road diesel buses here in Pullman. So we'll keep it at 25 for a while. And at the bottom point, source control is the term used by our stormwater folks. That really is what we're trying to do by putting these vehicles, some from the 1990s, undercover. You can't keep a vehicle that old from dripping, and you don't want it to end up in the South Fork. Yeah, this is our current conceptual design of what our campus and actual facility would look like if we proceed. And when I say proceed, I'm saying if I get the okay from you tonight to apply for a grant, and it would be an 80% coverage grant. The satellite garage will be at the north end of the Public Works campus, and on this particular slide, that is to the left. Left is north. It would hold 10 buses, 40-foot buses, and it would hold 6 vans. And it would also be equipped to handle the electric bus charging stations like we've started to install in our current garage. That's all part of the cost. Last Friday, Design West put paint at the corners of where this proposed satellite garage would be so that we could start working with M&O, see what their concerns are. In time, I mentioned M&O may transition some of their operations across Guy Street. We don't want to unnecessarily speed that up. So we're working with them on some variations of building corners, even size. In the existing building, which is the right half of the slide, the offices for transit management actually get smaller. We get more offices. We get 6 instead of 3. The break room gets bigger. We on that office I mentioned where I spent so much time, that becomes a photocopy room. So it's a good use for a dark room. The extra offices allow for all 4 of our current management staff to have legitimate offices, would allow us for what I hope is a staffing expansion within a couple of years for a new supervisor. And also that 6th office would work well for drivers between shifts. Slack time, reading room, a quiet room, we've heard it called elsewhere. And with all the storage we need right now, our administrative supervisor does a lot of the ordering. He might appreciate some storage space for the masks and the gloves and the hand sanitizers. We're pretty well stocked on that right now, but it is adding up. The big selling point, I think, is a couple of basic numbers. We increase the capacity of the break room from 40 to 80. And our current staff is 47 when we're fully staffed. So it would give us some room to grow, make it comfortable with room to grow. Okay, I know that you as council members are somewhat interested in the improvements and benefits that I'm trying to sell you on, but the numbers, I'm sure that's what you really need to see this as feasible. First of all, I want to point out that transit is an enterprise fund. We're the what I would call the scavengers of public service agencies, in that we provide a service to the public for a fee, and we build our budget on factors other than the general fund, like contracts and grants. The solution that I would propose has to be sustainable for me to bring it to you and for you to seriously consider it. I realize that. I've always taken a fiscally responsible approach, and between upcoming grant funding opportunities, the recent and continued COVID relief funding, and a solid starting cash balance, I think now is our window of opportunity. Speaking of federal funds, I need to throw this in. It might have been part of my other presentation. It feels somewhat like an earmark on this package, but speaking of federal funds, we are intending to use some of that COVID relief money to put out an extra express bus this August. I just want to give you the heads up that that's going to happen. It gives us the opportunity to ease back into full capacity. We would use the other expresses on campus to provide shorter rides from the residential areas down to the edge of campus. And this extra shuttle would be an on-campus option. And we consider it a pilot project while the money's there and while it's successful. So I'll give you a moment more to study those numbers before I move on to my final slide. Okay, my goal, this is again the last slide. My goal has been to share with you our strategy for the transit facilities and to get your support, input, your direction on how to move forward. My original full presentation, which would have included staffing, probably would have done a better job of tying the themes of recovery, retention, recruitment together a little better, but I still think this is a significant, well-timed opportunity and a project that would certainly be seen as a sign of recovery in these times. I'd like to begin work next month on this FTA grant that would fund 80% of the package. I expect the window for preparing those grants is a 3-month window. And as I mentioned earlier, we would continue to work with M&O to minimize any impact so that we can all benefit from this. I suppose you're going to have to ask, are we ready for such a big project? And I believe we are. I think the only service expansion that I've even mentioned is that pilot project, and that can come and go as quickly as it starts, as soon as federal funding dries up for the COVID relief, or if it's unsuccessful. What we're investing in with this project is the infrastructure of transit service, investing in a facility to provide adequate office space and break room space, and to bring our existing revenue vehicles, those vans and buses, undercover every night, all year long. The timing for funding these opportunities is also ideal. We have a good starting cash balance. We have unprecedented funding levels, and we have the necessary FTA grant just on the horizon. So I would welcome any questions, and then I would look for some direction on applying for this grant.
Okay, Dan Records, I see your hand up.
Wayne, I think for me, one of the big things here you said at the beginning was that the permit for the stormwater is going to become an issue pretty soon, it sounds like, and we need to be working towards getting those buses undercover. So that's a pretty big motivating factor for me to ensure that our waterways are clean, and that we're meeting those Department of Ecology requirements. One question. So based on that kind of timeline and budget you had out there showing us those numbers, so that this project, would you anticipate that this be construction be completed by the end of 2022?
No.
Okay.
No, I think this would be about a 3-year project.
Okay.
It would be the end of this year before we receive notice, and then we would go through the bid process. So luckily, if we're lucky, early next summer, we would have a contractor, and their schedule would dictate completion.
Okay.
And on my screen, I can only see a few council members. So if you have something to say, please do it verbally. There, Al Sorensen, I saw your hand. Okay.
I'm going to yield to Nathan. He had his up first, and I'll go after him. How's that?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Al. I appreciate that. Wayne, I have really one question, one comment. The question is, with those wraps, I know there's been previous challenges with site. With the wraps, people being able to see their location, so on and so forth. If you could speak about that, I'd appreciate it. And then I think the comment I would make is I appreciate you being proactive and looking towards the future. I feel all departments really need to be doing that and taking advantage of all opportunities to help with that funding. You've really set the bar very high as far as leadership with the department. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you. If the screen is showing the same as I see, these windows behind me, are open. And in the original wraps, those would have been brown, full cougar face. The scratch marks are left in. The very back window, we have left covered, but since the original wraps, they have two things. They do a perforated wrap, and they do a clear laminate over top of it. So light should come in easier. And that's the promise from the vendor, is that this is the solution. And it's worked well on the last bus as well. So yeah, every window except the very last one is totally free.
Okay. Al, thank you for yielding to Nathan, because I couldn't see Nathan on that screen. So Al, it's your turn.
Okay, I get just a real quick follow-up on the wrap. Wayne, I know kind of when we started all this and we started putting the cougar faces and all that kind of thing on there, WSU, I believe, was a contributor and helped us with the wraps and that type of thing. Are they still continuing to help us with that?
Not on these next two. No, they are struggling with revenue right now with students not on campus. So we've moved forward with these two on our own, and probably will the same with the water conservation theme. We would welcome their support and like to continue a cougar theme in some way, but these have been on our own.
What is the cost to wrap a bus?
$7,000 to $8,000 comes to mind.
Okay. Yeah,
Would you repeat that number, Wayne?
$7,000 or $8,000.
Okay, 7 or 8,000. Okay.
Yeah, for the product and the installation. They were only supposed to last about 5 years, but these have been going on 9 or 10, I believe, at this point. And
I don't want to keep going on this too much, but it's great that they participate with us. We're all in funding issues, and if things need to change a little bit, then maybe we need to change our idea if we're going to be the ones completely taking care of this. Okay, I want to go back. Can you real quick go back to the slide with the overview of the buildings, please?
Okay, is that it? Do you see it?
The current buildings, not the conceptual design.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you? Oh, my pointer's not going to work for you. So, can you tell me? The old storage units that we acquired down there from the Morgans. Are any of those being used by transit, and are any of those storage units large enough to park any of the vans or any of those in there? I know they're not big enough for buses, but what about vans and that type of thing?
Right. We do have some of the smaller units. We store some of our bus stop signs, our solar panels, I think some parts for some shelters. So we would happily move out if we could store items in the new satellite facility, but we don't have much of that space. I think 2 or 3 units. The area that looks red on top, more of a long Quonset hut. Mm-hmm. That one I've seen vehicles in, but we don't park any in. I think a van could fit there, but I think vehicles come and go for M&O, picking up tools and supplies from that location.
Okay, I don't know exactly how we've got those units utilized down there, and just was curious to know whether we were using that at all for some of your stuff. So,
we are.
Okay. Let's go now back to the numbers screen, please. And would you mind? I just need a little clarification and explanation of what some of these definitions are. I'm assuming I know what some of these are, but just for the general public and for me, can you kind of go through starting at the 2021 FTA CARES? What is that?
Sure.
And then just go down through those. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. The FTA CARES was the first of 3 federal COVID relief packages that we are receiving, and that money is now all claimed. we have claimed the full extent of what was $2.5 million. So in 2021, I'm allocating for or allowing for the 1.5 that we are getting in revenue. The next two, CRISA, or the current Recovery Act funding, like the bus grant, I've got a letter on my desk for it, but we're waiting for the contract. Instead of 2.5 million like FTA CARES was, this is $3.4 million that will come specifically to transit. And yeah, my numbers add up. 1.2 at the end of this year, 2.2 next year, and that'll be exhausted. There's another that I didn't put on this, the American Rescue Plan. We've been notified we'll receive transit funds for that as well, but I have no idea what the funding will be. I'm expecting it much lower. Moving down, I touch on the operating budgets in red, and that is just operating. I've taken capital out so I can show the buses as capital with total cost, and then adding in the grant revenue as well. I've included the third. I had enough notice when I started putting this together that I've got the 2 electrics we'll receive soon, as well as that third. And the project total, I never did really say what the project total is for what I propose. It's 5.6 million, and 80% of that would have to be grant funded. If not.
Okay, and then, so just the CRR SAA grant money we're getting from the federal government is specifically money going to transit. It's not part of our, for lack of a better term, the pool of money, Mike, that we've got that came to the city. This is actually earmarked specifically for this, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. I want to make sure that we know where this is kind of coming from and going to. Okay. I appreciate your comments on this. Now the operating budgets, that's just this facility stuff. There's none of the staffing numbers that were put into that, because this is the same slide you had with the previous presentation that included the staffing stuff. Those don't include any staffing, correct?
It does not include any staffing additions, right? I took that out. Any additions that we talk about later would bring that 2.4 down to about 1.8, I think. So
okay.
Those are not included here.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? And please make it verbally, since I only can see 4 people right now on my screen.
Mayor Brandon.
Okay, Brandon, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Wayne, for the presentation. I would assume operating budget would have to look different as well. Maybe not in 2022, but if this new complex or bus campus goes in. I think it totally is understandable. My only concern would be the M&O portion of it, making sure that we don't, you don't feel like we tell you move forward with it without having heard from M&O. That's my only concern, is where do they sit on this, and what is their long-term projection. I've heard of some of the things that they may expand to in the future, but I guess in the absence of having that being presented tonight at the same time, that's my only hesitation, is making sure things are fair and equitable, and they make sense for both you and M&O, who are sharing this site. So that's the only hesitation I have, but thank you for the presentation, and this
Sure.
makes sense.
I would say we are continuing to work with M&O. They do have concerns mostly about what impacts the part of that garage that I put up that shows the vans. That encroaches a little bit too far east, I think, for their comfort. So what I am thinking currently is to reduce the size of that shop down to just buses, just 10 buses. And that means we have room for 28 buses. We only have 25 right now, so plenty of room to store vans. It just gave us room for growth. And then as we grow, and as M&O has time to transition some operations to the east side of Guy Street or elsewhere, we would have access to that large shop to the east, is my expectation for the vans. We wouldn't need much space, but And that would be the backup plan if they really needed the extra space.
Okay. Any others? Again, make it verbally, please.
This is Eileen.
Okay, Eileen. Yes.
Wayne, just excellent as always. Just my, just sort of my wishful thinking. Could we maybe ask WSU if they want to contribute to the bus wrap on the new electric buses, all electric buses? I think that would be a feather in their cap. There's not many university communities that have electric buses and have been as forward thinking as we are. I would think that would be something they might find it in their hearts and in their wallets to support us on that. And I definitely agree that we need to get all our rigs under cover, because eventually I imagine that the Department of Ecology is going to ask us to capture all that water, and we've got to be in a building if we're going to capture the water that comes off those buses, rain, snow, ordinary drips. So yeah, we better do it now, because sooner or later it'll be mandated. So let's get her done with this money.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. What you see on that slide, the green is the floodplain, and those are aerial photos of vehicles parked in the floodplain, so they need to be moved. They're always moved on inspection day, of course, but this was a poorly timed photo. But we'd like to get them truly undercover. And I will ask about WSU contributing to the wraps. That would be good to give them the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Wayne, I assume that you've also discussed, because you mentioned stormwater, and stormwater has an account that seems like it should be able to be used for this particular purpose too, since you're trying to help that situation. So I know you work there with the public works budget, but I'm just thinking that might be another possibility for some additional funding for help on the match. Nathan, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I appreciate it. One other question, and this really is because Councilmember Sorensen had brought it up, and looking at if WSU is not able to partner or doesn't have the funds to partner, do we have other partnerships that maybe we can utilize for some of these wraps? I know we were discussing the water, but also Vista. I think as well, we are trying to market our own, our city. I know Al, Councilmember Sorensen, and myself are looking over some of those documents, the RFP, or where I think it's important for us to kind of look towards this in the future. It's great to partner with WSU. We already have, several wraps, but looking out at other partners as well. So I'm not sure if we've done that. Wayne, if you can speak to that, or maybe if there's plans in the future.
There will be plans in the future. We've not done much outreach to other agencies because it does have such a major WSU theme. The Public Works Department did cover the cost of the water conservation wrap, which we greatly appreciate, but we can reach out to others. That's a good point. It would be really easy to just copy the existing water conservation wrap on the new electric bus, add some theme elements, bring the cost down. But we're open to other designs too. And if we don't have to worry about advertising, that's going to be a big issue. We don't advertise on the buses, then sponsorship would be an option. Yeah, I'll definitely make a note to pursue that.
Any other comments?
Glenn, I could come back in. Is that okay?
Yes.
So kind of keeping on the theme of funding and partnership with WSU, I know that we have, quite a contract with them, and that contract was reduced quite a little bit. And I'm assuming that that's going to be changing when we start doing things greater. I go back to when there were no buses in this town, and I honestly do believe that it really kind of originated with being able to transport the WSU students to campus. There were other things, but that was the major deal, and that's the major deal right now. I think you could show us the numbers that's where they come from. So the partnership with WSU and our transit system really needs to be continued and proportionate, in my opinion. And, we do all of this infrastructure to house those buses and things, which are things that they don't really see. They see the buses running, but they don't know everything else that we're doing on the backside. Neither do the students or others. So I'm hoping that we're really looking towards WSU in continuing and maybe increasing partnership with this type of thing. We do an awful lot in this city to recognize Washington State University, not just with the transit system, but M&O and everything else. We've got paintings around town, road stuff, banners, all kinds of things. And, we do a really good job of promoting the university. And I think that we just want to make sure that their participation is equal. And I'm hoping that others on the council would agree with me that we want to continue that relationship going.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick, and I agree. It's a partnership that right now we've been able to use a lot of our federal relief money to supplement the revenue they don't have with missing student fees. We do hope in the late fall to be back to full contract. Right now, the discussions are that we would extend the amendment until October because they won't have student counts until 10th or so of September. And then the expectation is, if all is well, full contract. And it's a formula-based contract. We do CPI +1. So they're not doing just the labor costs. They're investing a little bit in behind the scenes infrastructure with that +1. So the added help with the wraps is even beyond that. But I will approach them on that as well.
Any other comments? No, Wayne is looking tonight for permission to go for a grant. And I'm seeing some generally affirmation on that, but
Mayor, this is Ann.
hi, Ann.
Hi.
Now that I see you on my screen.
I just wanted to thank you, Wayne, for always a thoughtful and thorough presentation. And I transit has been, like so many other departments, operating under much duress and yet gracefully most of the time, and providing a vital service and riding this wave of the pandemic with us all. And I love your language of, turn recovery into an economic opportunity or a growth opportunity. And I fully agree. And I would love to see you, go forward and apply for this grant.
Thank you.
I don't know if we need a motion.
Do we need a motion?
I think that would probably be appropriate.
Okay, then I move that Wayne be given or move forward with applying for this FTA grant.
Do I have a second? I didn't hear. Did I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Yeah.
No.
So I think this is a good conversation here. There's still some unanswered things. We're talking about M&O things. I mean, we didn't really get a breakdown of the numbers quite as well as I would like to have either. I mean, we just found out that the total project's 5.6 million and we're going to have an 80% grant. How much are we going to be responsible for here, and where are we going to come up with that money?
I'll go to that slide.
Okay. I believe you showed it earlier.
Yeah, the money is in the flow of revenue and existing reserves. So our starting balance plus revenue from operating revenue is a combination of WSU grants or WSU contracts, WSDOT operating grants, our annual budget's already submitted. What I would propose, because of the need for some more breakdown, is that I bring the draft application to you before I submit it, with time to make any changes. Right now, it is kind of like a blank check approach, and I'm not real comfortable with that either. But I can put the time into the application and give you an opportunity to review and approve it with edits if that would help.
Yeah, that would help me. I'm a numbers guy, so
Glad to do that.
yeah, okay.
And normally you generally do that. You bring the grants after you've gotten permission to go and start working on trying to put that together. So,
Right. This one was such a big one. I wanted to do that very formally too.
any other questions? We've had a motion and a second. All right, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Now you've got your work cut out for you, Wayne.
I do. Thank you all.
Thank you again for an excellent presentation. With that, we now move on our agenda to item number D, the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
So moved.
Move in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, Laura McAloon, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the May 18, 2021 meeting and approve them as submitted, and a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 103214 through 103262, totaling $425,098.95.
That was probably the shortest consent agenda that Laura's had a chance to read in a long time. So does the council have any item that they would like to have out for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 and 2. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now go to our public hearing tonight. It's water use efficiency presentation. And we go to our city engineer, Kara Haley, for the introductions. Kara?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased this evening to introduce you all to Ryan Withers. Ryan is a professional engineer with RH2 Engineering, who's the consulting company helping us through our current water system plan update process. Ryan is RH2's project manager on this project, and he will present to you tonight our draft proposed water use efficiency goals and program. And then both Ryan and I will be available for questions, comments, and discussion on the topic afterwards. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Ryan.
Okay, thank you, Kara. And I will begin sharing my screen. Should pop up. So with that, I'll begin. So thanks again, Kara. And again, I'm Ryan Withers with RH2 Engineering. And the purpose of this presentation tonight is to describe the city's water use efficiency program, the goals of the program, and to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, dive right into water conservation. Water conservation is important for a number of reasons. For one, conservation benefits customers in that less water use results in lower water bills. But there's also other ancillary benefits. The aquifer that the city's wells withdraw from is declining each year on the order of about 9 inches per year. And the city's wells are only capable of pumping a certain volume of water. So reduction in water use in the system can prolong the ability of your existing sources to be sufficient and delay the need for new wells, which cost millions of dollars. The state's water use efficiency rule was implemented in 2003, and it applies to all cities, such as Pullman, as well as larger community water systems within the state, with the goal to reduce, protect, and prolong the state's water resources and supplies. The requirements of the water use efficiency rule include developing goals on a city by city or water system by water system basis. Now every 10 years, it was previously every 6 years. And the city needs to prepare progress reports each year, identifying the strides made towards meeting these water use efficiency goals, and to show the volume of water supplied in the system, consumed by the customers of the system, and then calculating the water system leakage on a percentage basis each year. Other requirements of the state's rule are for each water system to maintain distribution system leakage at 10% or less of the total system supply volume. A requirement is to meter all sources and service connections and have an active water use efficiency program, and to continue to evaluate the effectiveness of any water conservation measures that are in place to help the city and the city customers conserve water. So this is the third time, I believe, that the city will have reviewed and updated its water use efficiency goals. The initial time was in 2008, and then again in 2014, and now again in 2021. And as I mentioned a moment ago, these goals will be effective for 10 years with the objective of attempting to maintain the city's historical pumping rates and volumes, at least as best as possible, in order to extend the ability of your existing sources to meet your future demands. So the strategy to do this is to implement measures that incrementally reduce water consumption throughout your system. Historically for the city, your past goals have reduced the average demand each customer uses and have been very successful. I have some charts here in a moment that will demonstrate this. In fact, let's dive right into them. So I'll walk through a few charts here. These show the historical characteristics of water use in your water system. And this chart shows the total annual volume of water supplied by the water system, and that's the blue line. And this is between 2008 and 2019. And you can see your annual volume has remained relatively constant. There's some minor annual fluctuations, but in general, around 900 million gallons of water supplied in your system each year. And then in green is the demand per capita for each year over that same time frame. So you can see that green line has a downward trend as demand per capita has decreased from approximately 115 gallons per capita per day down to about 91 gallons per capita per day in 2019. Now this next chart shows those same two data sets, but also shows where the system would be had you not experienced any savings on a per capita basis over these last 12 years. So had the demand per capita remained at 115 gallons per capita per day, that's the dashed green line across the top, had that stayed fixed at 115 gallons per day, with the growth the city has seen, the 2019 annual supply would have been nearly 1.2 billion gallons, which is about 250 million gallons more than you actually supplied in 2019. So point being, you have experienced very significant savings over these past 12, 13 years, and that is an absolute major benefit to your system, your customer water bills, and your rates. Another chart here shows data also between 2008 and 2019, but this time showing the demand per capita per day for a number of water systems. So the Pullman water system is the larger blue dots sort of towards the bottom of the chart, and other systems in the region, such as Colfax, Moscow, Spokane, Cheney, they're included as the various gray dots on this chart, as well as even some other systems in central and western Washington. Just for reference, again, this is a statewide water use efficiency rule, requirement, and program. So it always helps to have eyes on what everybody else is doing, not just our closest neighbors. So the symbols to the bottom of this chart represent less water use per person, which in general is good in terms of water conservation. So you can note really how low Pullman's demand is. And really the only system consistently lower than Pullman is Seattle, which has the benefit of higher population density, more rain, cooler summers, smaller lots and yards. There's some other systems that dip down below 100 gallons per capita per day for a seemingly random year. But Pullman is definitely on the lower end of the spectrum, which again, in terms of water use efficiency, is a very good thing. Yet another chart here showing the historical monthly water supply in your system. You can see in the non-summer months when irrigation is generally not occurring, there's a baseline supply of 50, maybe 60 million gallons per month. And then in the summer, your water system supply increases, maxing out at approximately 140 million gallons per month. So that means that each July and each August, there's an additional 80 million gallons of supply or really demand in your system each month. So that's another 2, almost 3 million gallons per day that your water system is required to supply. So that's historically what you're up against and where you have been. Now I'm going to talk about sort of where this water use efficiency program proposes that we go for these next 10 years. In terms of implementing and tracking what a successful water use efficiency measure or what a successful water use efficiency plan would be, there's really two types of measures. There's quantifiable measures, such as rebates for replacing older toilets with low flow or high efficiency toilets, or replacing faucets or shower heads with low flow fixtures. Those are examples where you can make a reasonable estimate to approximate water savings. So for example, a toilet replacement that uses 1 less gallon per flush, it's relatively easy to estimate the water savings on a daily or annual basis. But on the other end of the spectrum are some examples and measures that are somewhat difficult to quantify. So the city including water conservation tips or water consumption history and bills is likely pretty helpful in reducing water use, but it's actually very difficult to estimate how effective those measures and examples are. And unfortunately, most measures are actually relatively difficult to quantify, which for the engineer in me is relatively frustrating, but that's reality. So with that, this chart shows the city's daily water production volume averages over the last 12 years. And the royal blue columns are the actual volume of water supplied. And then the other colors are estimates of water savings from conservation measures that were in place at the time in any of the given years. So even with more efficient plumbing fixtures for new construction and rebates for replacing fixtures in existing homes, really the majority of water savings realized over these past 12 years is in these gray bars, which are the difficult to quantify water use efficiency saving measures. So there's definitely savings, but they're difficult to quantify. They're not all coming from toilet replacements and shower head replacements. They're coming from other more difficult to quantify avenues. So building upon that previous chart, but now looking forward, where this previous chart showed historical savings, this chart shows projected savings of the proposed water use efficiency program over these next 10 years. So it's hard, again, for us to quantify those difficult to quantify savings, even though you've been realizing them over these past 10, 12 years. So for the purposes of projecting forward, the largest savings component shown in pink is stemming from the leak detection in the city's distribution system that the M&O department leads every 2 years. And then savings from installation of higher efficiency toilets, faucets, shower heads, auditing larger water users, and having lawn replacement credits. Those are all smaller percentages of the projected annual savings. And then looking at annual water supply on an annual basis, starting all the way back in 2008, and then projecting all the way forward through these next 10 years through 2031, the annual water savings is shown in the hollow, or I guess white portion of these columns, with the actual and projected supply in blue. And the purpose of this chart is to really demonstrate how the historical water savings for the past 10 or 12 years is really projected to continue through these next 10 years. So the savings are somewhat growing linearly into the future. The city's in really a good shape in the terms of water conservation and water use efficiency. And so our goal here is really to build upon that and to continue those efforts and incrementally try and improve, wherever we can. Okay, the city's previous water use efficiency program, I mentioned earlier, but it was prepared in 2014. It was approved by City Council and the State Department of Health, and it promotes water conservation. It identifies activities that reduce water demands, and it implements water use efficiency measures that are not only cost effective, but are effective in reducing water use. And the measures that were in your 2014 water use efficiency program are listed here in this table. And some of these measures are mandatory at the top of this table. So those are measures such as metering all of your source meters, all of your service meters, and evaluating rate schedules that encourage conservation. And then other measures that were selected by the city are shown in the bottom half of the table. And they include such things as including a customer's consumption history on their bill, or providing free low flow fixtures such as faucet aerators or shower heads, providing rebates for high efficiency toilet installations, washing machines, or replacement of grass or lawn with more hardscaped or water-wise landscaping. And your current program also includes a school program to promote water conservation. It also includes using smart landscaping timers and sprinklers at some city parks. And I mentioned the distribution system leak detection that the M&O department leads. So again, that's where we were going forward to the next 10 years. The proposed goals include the cities are included in the city's draft water system plan, and they include a goal to reduce the per capita demand by an additional 3 gallons per day by 2031, to maintain the distribution system leakage to 10% or less on an annual basis, and to continue to participate in the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee. So if these goals are fully achieved, again, with no consideration or very little consideration for some of the difficult to quantify water savings that may be realized, your system will be using 82,000 gallons per day less in 2031 than if no savings are attained over the next 10 years due to water conservation. So that equates to 183 million gallons of water saved over the next 10 years. So that's 183 million gallons of water that does not need to come out of the already depleted or continuing to be depleted aquifer. And that volume of water is equivalent to filling Martin Stadium with essentially 10 times, 9 to 10 times. So essentially filling it once every year and just losing that water. So those are the goals. And in order to meet those goals, multiple measures are proposed to be continued and implemented in your water use efficiency program. We recommend that the city continue to provide rebates and incentives for the installation of high efficiency toilets and credits, and also credits for replacing lawns with alternative solutions that use less water. We also recommend that you continue to provide free fixtures to assist in conservation, such as shower heads, faucet aerators, leak detection tablets for toilets. And the proposed water use efficiency measures are shown in this table. So it's a very similar table to the one I showed a few minutes ago. And the changes in this table are shown with the two different colors of shading. So the orange shading represents measures that we recommend either removing or not pursue too significantly going forward, such as providing washing machine rebates to the apartment complexes, or pursuing any more significant high-tech or smart watering timers as retrofits to additional city parks, but maintaining those that have them today. And then the green shading represents measures that are suggested as being, improved or really emphasized going forward. So those are increasing the rebate amounts for high-efficiency toilets to promote those toilet replacements. Increasing the turf replacement credits for lawns, and having a tiered system that provides a credit for every 300 square feet of lawn area that is replaced. So we don't want folks thinking that they need to replace their entire lawn to receive the credit. A smaller area can help. Every little bit helps. And then also recommending that turf replacement credit for new construction as well, with half of that credit available to the developer, but also the other half available to the customer in an attempt to incentivize more water conservative landscaping. The city will also be installing water-wise landscaping at the new city hall. So that will not only conserve water, but also demonstrate how landscaping can be tasteful and welcoming while also conserving water. Mention has already been made tonight regarding the water conservation wrapping on one of the Pullman Transit buses. So that's relatively new. And the city will be striving to audit at least 2 schools or restaurants or commercial buildings per year to provide recommendations to reduce water use. So the intent here is not to require any changes of those businesses, but rather to come with these free faucet aerators, or to identify toilets that are pre-plumbing code 1993 that would be eligible for those toilet rebates. And then the city will also strive to provide more information to customers regarding seasonal watering needs, and to provide a voluntary lawn watering calendar to help reduce over irrigation of lawns. So just to be clear, the intention is not to apply any sort of mandatory irrigation restrictions, but rather for customer participation to be 100% optional. I'll point out that one of these measures has already been in place and is proposed to remain in place, that being the city's inclining block and seasonal rate structure. These charts show the water rates for various customer classes based on the varying months of the year. So you can see how in the irrigation season, the rates increase to attempt to discourage overwatering, and then the rates increase further for single family or for irrigation only meters depending on how much water is actually used each month. And again, these rates are already in place and recommended to remain in place. I mentioned that one of the goals was to maintain 10% or less distribution system leakage, and that's a state standard benchmark, State Department of Health. This chart shows the city's annual leakage rate, generally tracking at about 4%, plus or minus a percent. So there's really no reason to believe that remaining under 10% will be problematic. And then I mentioned these new measures on a previous slide, so just reiterating them here, and won't repeat myself for the sake of time. But these are the proposed new or slightly more adjusted and emphasized water use efficiency measures. And then, in terms of next steps, so on behalf of Kara and Kevin, we're requesting public or council feedback tonight, and then subsequently we'll be updating the water use efficiency program based on any feedback, and then not requesting any action tonight, but recommending at a future council meeting adoption of the water use efficiency program. And then subsequently, the State Department of Health will also review and hopefully adopt or approve, I should say, the water use efficiency program. And then 10 years from now, the water use efficiency goals will be subsequently updated. And then lastly, just as a public service announcement in terms of what anyone can do to help conserve water, replacing old or leaky appliances or fixtures, outside watering on more of an every other day basis, and best if it can only be done in the early morning or evening hours. And then using washing machines or dishwashers really with full loads as opposed to partial loads. So with that, I'll stop and field any questions. And again, just making clear, not requesting council action at this time, but rather fielding any questions.
Brandon, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Ryan, thank you for the presentation. I guess I realize toilets are something that are used year round. So I'm trying to gauge the a comparison between a toilet usage and the irrigation usage at one's home. I have a rather large lawn, and so this is something that during the summertime I try to use as little as I can while still maintaining the grass fairly green. So I guess what I'm curious about is I've seen where some of these smart controllers in different studies, controlled studies, could use anywhere from 25 to 50% less water. It uses AI. Would there be value, because I know we're incentivizing toilet replacement rebates and such. What about smart water controllers, things of that nature? Is there any value in that to have people using less water through something like that?
There's definitely value. The issue with that though is that a lot of, however smart they are, they can always be overridden, or they're only as smart as your initial setup of your zones and of your the time. You can always manually adjust things, and so there's somewhat diminished returns. If everyone used them as smart as they possibly could be, absolutely, you come out ahead. But in my experience, big picture, in terms of everybody, that's really not the case. Certainly the opportunity is there for additional or much more significant savings than say, saving, half a gallon or a gallon per flush of a toilet. But with the toilet rebates and toilet replacement program, that's something that there's no, manual manipulating. It's, a flush is a flush. I guess, if there's multiple flushes, I guess that point doesn't stand. But I think you get the point is, if the overall goal here is to save, say 3 gallons per capita per day, that's the equivalent of say, a minute or two of water faucet use, or a flush or two per day per person. And so the city's in such good standing in terms of current daily use of all of your customers. The intent here is really just to make sure we don't lose this great standing that you have amongst your peers, and just continue to make incremental improvements to continue to protect your water.
Thank you.
Al, I saw your hand.
Okay, a couple quick questions, and I was waiting for on one of your slides, Ryan, I know you were talking about toilets, but I'm going to tell you one of the greatest water waste is the flapper in your toilet not sealing completely. And I've had this happen at a couple of different places. The amount of water that can seep out from a tank of a toilet is unbelievable, even when it's just a little bit. And I'd like to. It's kind of hard to do a flapper replacement program because they're all a little bit different. But man, if we could educate people on that, and if you hear something or whatever, the amount of savings of water in just that could probably meet our 3 gallons a day in the city. I think it's awesome that we are kind of leading, these cities and things, and we've made a concerted effort on this. And I know Nathan was on council, I was on council when we adopted the last, and I'm probably missing Pat or somebody. She's been here forever, but I'm just kidding, Pat. We've taken a really concerted effort with this, and it started years ago. With all kinds of things going on. And one of them is the usage at WSU also. And can you tell me, the numbers you're giving us here are only city water numbers, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so I know that WSU is really working hard at doing the same thing. I'd be curious. I know you don't have any numbers from them because everything you put up there was just other cities. But I believe they're probably doing just as good as we are about conserving water and changing to a different landscaping and that type of thing. So I think you're spot on with your recommendations with this, that, we're doing such a great job right now that if we can, I know that there's some maintenance issues for us and the leakage in the system. And if we can get some of that stopped and continue to educate people in their water bills and everything else, I think that's just a great way to go. And I've got to believe that the state is really pretty happy with the city of Pullman at the end of the day.
Other comments, Nathan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad Councilmember Sorensen mentioned WSU, because I was looking through the document and it stated, we went through a study of water reclamation back in 2014. WSU has decided not to move forward with any of those as far as I could see in the document. And I know it's quite expensive, but I also understand, we're patting ourselves on the back saying we're doing great. Well, we have a declining aquifer, and it's really, it's kind of frightening to look at, and how quickly both Pullman and Moscow, who rely on the same aquifers, are growing. And while I really, really appreciate your kudos on this, Ryan, and continuing to push us forward in a comfortable manner, I really feel like Pullman, can't say anything about Moscow, but Pullman really needs to start pushing into an uncomfortable position in order to plan for the future. As far as I see many businesses watering when, there's a rainstorm going on. There's been a lot of this that I've seen around. There's been times where one thing that I started doing when I actually started, I keep my lawn pretty brown, but I wanted to try to put some grass in the back, and I started looking at research on when is the best time to water, so as not to lose that to evaporation or anything along those lines. Do we have a program to inform the public about best watering times to keep that in the ground, best practices? Because I think new homeowners, single families would benefit from some of that information, timing, months, so on and so forth. So I know I threw a few things out at you, but I think ultimately, as we move forward, we're going to have to look at, enforcement of some water restrictions as well coming up. And maybe this will be in another 5 years or 3 years, but I'd much rather deal with it by carrot than by stick. But we're going to face some hard decisions, I feel, coming up.
Any other comments?
This is Eileen.
Eileen, go ahead.
Maybe we can have Kara jump in here too if she's still with us. There's a lot being done, and there's a ton of resources out there. PBAC has worked its tail off over the last year to look at all sorts of innovative water resource and water use, and the documentation is vast. It's not like nothing's being done, because there's a lot being done at every level, and this is just one example of that. I think what the only thing that I really see lacking is the fact that we have not promoted this enough. Too many people say, well, nobody's doing anything, why should I? Well, there's a lot being done, and maybe Kara could speak to some of the numbers. You probably have seen them more recently than I have at WSU. A tremendous amount is being done all over the region, and we really do deserve a lot of credit. And so people need to support one another and be positive about this. Crying, saying that the sky is falling, it doesn't feed, doesn't help the system any. And a lot is being done. And I get a little frustrated when I come to citizens, or they say, well, what about the golf course? Or what about WSU? Or what about Moscow? Well, everyone really is pulling together on this, and a lot of effort at a very modest expense, by the way, has been put into this. Water reclamation has been examined, and conservation measures and other measures are much more effective in making better use of our water than reclamation. It was kind of one of those good ideas that sounded like a good idea, but really is not. So I don't know if Kara wants to jump in here for a minute, but I feel very good about what's going on. Of course, there can always be more, and I think we need to let people know that a lot is being done.
Let's go to Kara, and then we'll go to Dan Records. Okay.
Sure. Yep. I can chime in on a few things. Thank you, Eileen, for kind of highlighting PBAC a little bit. There are a lot of things going on with PBAC right now, with City of Moscow, the universities, Latah, Whitman County. Everybody's really trying to gear up to really hone in on some specific alternatives. There's been a lot of community outreach. There's a community outreach plan underway. PBAC has a consultant on board right now who's really trying to lead that effort, try to narrow down. I mean, PBAC has come a long ways. It's come from, at one point, there was 20 different alternatives down to 4 different alternatives. The current effort is to even refine further down to just 1 or 2 alternatives that are really viable options. So there's a lot going on with that. And I guess back to the water reclamation, I don't think that's completely off the table at this point either. PBAC continues to explore that as well. There's some different alternatives that are a little more piecemeal in different places, and water reclamation is potentially one of those, or diverting water from one of our rivers and putting in a water treatment plant is another alternative. So there's a lot of things out there, and PBAC is just ramping up even more to be putting information out. So that continues to go up. They've also got a social media person who's really trying to push social media and get more information out. So as far as PBAC goes, there is a lot going on. I have a couple notes here. I do know, let's see, I think it was Brandon who maybe mentioned WSU. I know they're starting up their next water system plan update. So there'll probably be more information out from them, and they'll be going through a similar process that we're going through for their own water system. So I did hear that they were starting that off. And then Nathan's comment about education and the best time to water. I think that's a really good suggestion. And actually, that's one of the items that we're kind of adding here, although as Ryan stressed, it wouldn't be a mandatory requirement of when you irrigate. And there are other municipalities that take that approach, and maybe that is something that the city needs to consider in a slightly longer term approach. But right now we would just be talking about finding ways to get some of that education material out. It would be optional. We would push it because a lot of people don't know that early in the morning is the best time of day to water, and that watering every other day can be efficient rather than every day. So we could start as an incremental approach, and in this current plan we could talk about it being optional and getting information out there. And then as things evolve, we always can come back to these things, talk about rebate amounts. I mean, I think there there's opportunities for this to be revamped even within the 10-year period if needed. But this is what we would propose as a starting point.
Dan, we'll go to you.
I just want to say thank you, Ryan, for the presentation. It's really nice to see kind of the successes that we've had, and how we are kind of sitting in comparison to other cities across the state. As far as the kind of hard to measure categories, I think, we can attribute some of the success in those areas to the work of PBAC and to the education that we put out there. Because I know, I think we all experience this on this council of there are a large portion of our citizens that are very concerned about the declining aquifer. And that is because there is so much education out there and so much communication from PBAC on that issue. And so we do have a sizable portion of our population that is very concerned about this issue. And I think they are taking that to heart in implementing those actions. And so I think we need to continue in putting the word out there, because, like Nathan said, our both our communities are continuing to grow at fairly quick paces, and we need to stay ahead of this. And it's great that we're doing well now, but we need to keep doing well off into the future, because as the stress on our aquifer continues, we're going to be having to look at very seriously at some of those other options that Kara was describing. And these issues in water conservation is not an issue that's going to go away anytime soon. It's going to be with us. It's part of living in Pullman. It's part of living in Eastern Washington. And we need to take this very seriously. So I think, it's great to see that we're doing so well now, but we also need to keep this at top of mind.
Ann Parks, saw your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to comment that as a member of the Finance Committee for many years and auditing the vouchers that come through the city, it was quite remarkable how many of our residents do in fact take advantage of the incentive programs that we have, particularly the toilet replacement program. And I saw a lot of landlords would do it on their on their individual rental properties, and a lot of yard replacements. I do think the yard replacement is something that probably could be promoted a little bit more. I don't think people really know about it or how to go about it. We did it here in our front yard, and it's been brilliant. I love it. But we kind of had to figure out what to do. So, and the announcements that we have from the city, the Take Care and Be Water Aware promotion campaign is fantastic. And I hear those a lot, and that would be something probably simple to push more out there as well if we felt like that was needed. But I'm glad to see that our efforts have worked quite well, and I give big kudos to the people in the city responsible for the campaigns and the education that's been happening, as well as PBAC.
Yeah, I was just looking yes, Kara?
Yeah, can I comment real quick on what Ann said? And I think she's right. There have been a lot of toilet rebates over the last several years. I was kind of stewing through some of the data, and in 2014 we had a really high jump in the amount of toilet rebates that have come in, and then it has trickled out a little bit. We continue to get rebates in, and I don't know if this was stressed as much in the presentation, but one of the things that we're proposing with this current update is to up the cost of some of our rebates, because we have seen a slowing down of the amount of toilet rebates that are coming in. Another thing that we're proposing here is trying to, I pulled up a number because I'm also an engineer and kind of a nerd like that. And I think from 2008 to 2020, so in our last round, we had 5 different toilet rebates. And one of them was associated with the 1 gallon per flush toilets, which are the ultra high efficiency toilets. And that was what the highest rebate had been offered towards. Turns out in that whole time frame, we've had 1.5% of those rebates that have gone to those particular toilets. So we're trying to get better about, we reached out to some developers to see, maybe why didn't you want to put that one in? Well, the rebate wasn't high enough to cover the cost of the toilet. As it turns out, there's also sometimes issues with, they need to be pressure assisted, was my understanding. And so when those break, they're hard. You basically have to replace them, or plumbers get called out a lot for them. So our current approach is really to try and up some of the more common rebates, that still target the 1.28 and the 1.6 gallons per flush toilets, which are still super efficient, as well as the dual flush toilets, in hopes that that will entice some additional folks, because we have seen the numbers start to slow. And then similar with turf replacement, we're actually proposing upping the rebate amount. And one thought behind that was there's some municipalities that sometimes have an FTE dedicated to doing education related to that irrigation. We don't feel like we really have somebody that can do that right now, or that's a particular approach that we could take on. But by upping those prices, again, it's hopefully another incentive that will get people even more interested in it, and hopefully that will boost our irrigation numbers. Because I think since 2014, when that the turf replacement went in, we have seen some good success, but I think we've had maybe 13 different folks that have put in rebates on that, and I'd particularly like to see that increase, especially because irrigation is such a big use for water efficiency. I mean, you saw it on that chart in those summer months, how much water we use for irrigation. So trying to hit the big areas where we can is kind of what we're trying to do here. Or it's at least what we're trying to attempt.
Yeah, follow up, Ann.
Yeah, just one follow-up, please. Thank you. We actually did the turf replacement, and we weren't aware of the incentive at the time. So it was several years ago. And one thing we really didn't know is that you had to have someone come out and look at your turf before you started. So I was like, oh, now I'm aware of it. We did that. And it was like, no. So, I mean, just those sorts of little things I think that people might miss, and getting that word out there. But like I said, I love the take care and be water aware. And those could definitely be little changes could be implemented to make that even more effective.
Same thing
Yeah,
applies.
that's a great idea.
You have to have the toilets inspected before you have them replaced. The Johnsons have all of our toilets we've qualified for rebates with, let me see, 2 out of 3 we qualified for. Nathan, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to make sure that everybody understands. Of course, I realize how much we are doing. Coming from an environmental science background, especially in this region, it's important for us not to take the foot off the pedal on this. And so I appreciate what Eileen says. I do appreciate that. The reclamation has been proven in other areas to work. So I do hope we can continue to look at that, although at this time it is extremely expensive. That is true. I did have questions. Well, first on the turf replacement, I know Moscow does this. I was at a city council meeting of Moscow a few years ago where they highlighted certain houses or areas that chose to do turf replacement. Have we decided if we can, is there a way to highlight certain homes that have done that? It's kind of like hey, look at what we're doing together. Maybe that would help get the word out. I'm not sure if that's on your radar.
Yeah, I believe Moscow's program is an award that they put out, and I think they have an application process that goes into it, and so people have to nominate somebody, and then of course there's an application process and processing of that, and having a staff or person on board who can basically sift through that and administer that. So we haven't talked about it. It's definitely something that I think works well for Moscow. Although they do have a fairly dedicated person who focuses on their water efficiency programs, and that they have time built in to do that.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just thinking about, being able to highlight that. The other question I had is, looking at the documentation, you have the check marks. I'm looking at table 4.1 WE program measures. You have check marks on different single family, multifamily, ICI. Can you explain, are these ones that are undergoing, chosen not to undergo, and so on? Because I'm looking at water main leak detection. There's nothing in there. However, that may be something you're undergoing right now. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I can take that, Kara. Yeah, so those selected measures, check mark or not, are measures that are underway, proposed to continue to remain in place and underway through the next 10 years. The check marks are more of a accounting for the Department of Health in terms of what they consider a selected water use efficiency measure. So for example, let's take the water main leak detection. That's great. It saves you water. Undeniably, you get a report every 2 years when M&O coordinates this, and an estimate within that of how much water is saved once those leaks are fixed. So that absolutely saves you water. It's something that you need to account for. But somewhat surprisingly enough, that does not count as a measure in the eyes of the Department of Health. So an acceptable selected measure is something like implementing a conservation rate structure to your different customer classes. So since you apply that rate structure to your single family customers, your multifamily customers, and then grouping together here, your industrial, your commercial, your school customers, that counts as a single measure for each of those customer classes. So that's why there's 3 check marks under the conservation rate structure line, if you will, in that table. So that's all of those measures are proposed to be in place. It's just an accounting thing in the eyes of health.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. One last question is, can you explain the logic behind the choosing to continue previously implemented improvements at 3 parks, but not pursuing improvements at other parks?
Yes. In fact, actually, Kara, would you be better suited to take that? There was a study performed, I'm not sure how many years ago, and some of the improvements were implemented at 3 parks. Do you have more of the backstory there, Kara?
I'm gonna tag Kevin into this one. I see he turned his camera on. He knows it.
Yeah, I figured this was coming to me. Good evening, Council and Mayor. When we implemented those park efficiency measures in the past, and it's similar to what Brandon had talked about with his own lawn, doing probes to measure moisture and temperature and all of that. It sounded pretty Buck Rogers and pretty sophisticated, but when we actually looked at the data afterwards, we didn't really save all that much water. And so the expense didn't seem to be worthwhile based on the water savings. So that's why we implemented at the 3, we tried it out, and then we haven't moved it forward since then. Now, maybe the technology has changed in the intervening years and they're better, but based on our pilot from before, we just didn't see the results to continue it.
Okay. Al, did I see your hand up earlier? Okay, and then we'll go to Brandon.
Yeah. Just sitting here and thinking about all this kind of thing, and we're talking about toilets and water flow and all those kinds of things. Kara, I don't know if you've done this or not, but it might be appropriate to maybe approach some of our local plumbers and find out from them, what are people buying? Why are they buying it? Why won't they buy the upgrade? Is there a way we could incentivize them at that point in things? And I have a couple of names for you. I'll give you at another time, but of plumbers. But kind of getting they're the ones that are dealing with the customers, and that could be extremely helpful on that side. So I wanted to throw that in just while we were talking about it, so I wouldn't forget. So
I can tell you, Ken Paulson is very much aware of the rebates, because I dealt with him. He said, "Oh, now this qualifies for that." So some plumbers are very much in tune with that. And Kara, we'll go back to you.
I got stuck with the toilet in my front yard also, Glenn, before I had him come look. So
no, that's a great suggestion, Al, and we'd take any information and certainly give folks a call and see if they have anything to add to it, especially as we look to kind of finalize and revise our rebates slightly. So.
Okay, we'll go to Brandon.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, since Kevin had talked about the probes and all that, I will confirm what Ryan had said. Quite literally, yes, I have a new controller, and it will tell me, hey, your soil is too wet. We could probably skip watering, but it will often say, hey, it's going to rain. Let's skip it. And I can look up in the sky and say, yeah, it doesn't look like it's actually going to rain. I'm going to water anyway. So I will manually override it. And that's how it happens. So you give a smart controller to the least common denominator, and it doesn't work. So
my automatic sprinklers come on at about 1:30 in the morning, and I always check the forecasts. And generally, the forecasts are pretty good. So I know what days I'm going to hit it. And it's definitely not every day. It's like about every third day, especially right now. You can get by with every fourth day. Ryan, one thing that you mentioned the PBAC on your slides, we also support the Water Summit every year. It comes in October. And we support it financially. We participate. The city gives reports. And so I think that should be on your list as well, the Water Summit that Paul Kimmel and John Kimberlin are the co-chairs for that. And it's a really important summit. We bring in top guests, and that's something also that should be on your list.
No problem. Thank you for the suggestion.
Other comments? If not,
I will add, maybe this is a question for Dee. So we did publicize this as a public hearing for the last 2 weeks. Earlier today, I heard we had no comments back. Dee, did anybody sign up between 1 and 5 to speak or ask questions this evening?
We do not on this subject, no.
I heard no one beforehand. That's why I didn't call for it right now.
Mayor, there is a name on there that a caller that I'm not recognizing the name.
That is for under new business, Laura.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to check.
All right.
Sure.
Anything else you want to wrap up with, Kara, with this report? Again, Ryan, thank you very much for the great details.
No, I appreciate everybody's feedback and input, and we'll take some of this back and spin our wheels a little bit, and we'll be back at another date with hopefully some finalized information and a finalized chapter. So.
All right. Our next item is the regular agenda. Tonight is Economic Development Marketing RFP. With that, Jennifer Hackman.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Council discussed and considered components and tiers of economic development marketing at its May 11th meeting. And just as a reminder, there were about 3 tiers that you discussed. The first tier was repositioning and repackaging what we had. The second tier was an assessment with marketing plan and different components of executing forward with tier 2, and also directed staff to prepare a draft RFP with the assistance of 2 council members. So Council Members Sorensen and Weller were very generous with their time and participated with myself and also City Administrator Urban. We met last Monday and talked about the goals of the project, and we reviewed different potential components. And the group determined that the way forward that they'd like to recommend would be to go with an RFP for mounting an assessment primarily and a marketing plan as a first phase of that tier. This would then be followed on with recommendations from a consultant or an agency for the kind of marketing components that would be recommended for a future RFP. So really dividing this into 2 phases where we take a strong look at assessing where we are and receiving input. And then that second phase really being on executing that input with potentially the same agency, but potentially other agencies or other firms that would come out of that recommendation. So staff worked on an RFP draft, which you have before you, and received comments from the whole team. And at this time, we're ready to take your recommendations and your comments. I will add that as part of the RFP, Councilor Records pointed out that our affirmative action part of that was not up to date. So that has already been changed in the current RFP that I have. And unfortunately, you don't have that up to date, but we did update that affirmative action requirement, that's section F. And I think at this point, if the council would like to move forward, we're ready to move forward with an RFP, and you could make a motion to authorize city staff to do that. This RFP for an assessment is anticipated to take a few months and to be offered at no more than 10,000 is what we've got on the draft RFP. And with that, I will listen to your comments and answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
I'll defer first of all to members of the council committee, Nathan or Al, for any comments you would like to add to that before we go to other council members. Anything that you would like to add to the RFP discussion since you were on that committee?
I think it was really well done. It was a good discussion about what is the next step that we need to take. We don't want to jump forward too far without doing a proper assessment of the community. And Jennifer is had great suggestions. Al did as well. So Al, I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah, we discussed quite a little bit and bantered this around a little bit from the very first suggestion on the RFP, and we did this really quickly, so we were able to give some comments back to Jennifer. And one of the main things that I was talking about was making sure that we weren't underselling the importance of our current businesses in town and growing those businesses instead of doing outsource marketing, that we wanted to make sure that we included that in this. And then the other part of it that became really important to me was the speed at which we really get going on this. I didn't want to delay getting this done too far down the road. With those three examples we had when the full council looked at things first, there was a short timeline, kind of a 12 to 18 month, and then longer than that. And I just, I understand it takes time to do some things, but the idea here with our 3 R's is to really, get the professionals hired and get us moving on it as quickly as possible. And I don't know if we kind of got that all handled in this, Jen, or not under the scope of work and deliverables. I don't know if we want to reword that a little bit. I was kind of talking about results no later than and that kind of thing, instead of you've got 12 to 18 months to get it done. I thought, that 12 on the beginning side of that to me is giving too much time, to be honest with you, in my opinion. And then the rest of this, we just kind of threw out there in the timeline, you guys, is really quick because, again, my thought here is to try to get this going as quick as possible. I think, Nathan, you kind of agreed with that, and Mike agreed with that as we were talking in the meeting about all this. So that's where I was from in the discussion about it. So we'll have your input on it also. So.
Okay, thank you, Alan, Nathan. Other council members' comments on this? Eileen.
Yeah, I agree with the speed on the timeline on that, and Al's consideration of the 12 months does seem overly generous. My thought with the section 2 of background, it feels like I've seen this sentence again and again. City of Pullman is a small rural town located in Whitman County in Southeast Indiana. I mean, it sounds like something out of the Atlas or something. Can we make this a little more colorful and make this a little more attractive and sell ourselves a little bit here? I mean, we're trying to appeal to marketing people. Why don't we market ourselves a little bit better on that rather than just some dry statistics? Because we're way more than dry statistics. We're the home of the Cougars, and we have a vibrant downtown. There's that word I don't care for, but in this case it applies. and let's not sell ourselves short here, because we want to attract somebody who wants to work with us. Make that sound like it was something that they would want to put their time and talent into. Let's just, I realize that time is of the essence here and you want to get this out very quickly, but let's bump this language up a little bit and make us sound like someplace that they would want to join forces with us and make this a better place. It's just very dry, very dry.
I would agree with that, Eileen, and I think we do need to sell ourselves a little bit more in this. And we're a vibrant city, not a rural town. I mean, we wanted to get the flavor of where we're at,
absolutely,
and who we are. But you're right. Selling us in a little bit different way might be good. The other thing, and the reason I jumped back in here was, one of the things that I was talking about in our meeting is that we needed the professionals and the consultants to be people who have a flavor for the area, and that kind of thing, instead of being someone from the East Coast. I mean, I'm just using that as a big wide example there, but getting someone who understands what we are, because we are unique. We are definitely unique when it comes to this stuff. So finding someone like that is very important also.
Other comments? Brandon.
You're muted, Brandon.
Yep. Can I just ask, in terms of putting this out to bid, I know we've discussed this before with other projects in being bound by price versus being bound by qualifications. Where do we sit on that? I don't want to feel stuck because somebody came in with the lowest bid. I want to make sure we get the right person or company or what have you. Saw Laura jump on.
I can answer that if you'd like, Mayor. A request for qualifications is just that, a qualification-based procurement. So it's used to obtain the most qualified vendor. So it is not a price-controlled solicitation. You do not have to take the low bid. It's request for qualifications, and it also gives the city the flexibility to negotiate that price down if the most qualified person has too high of a price.
Thanks, Laura.
I just want to question one thing, because you're saying RFQ and this is an RFP. I want to make sure the language is coordinated with that.
The good point, Mayor. So the request for proposals is requesting qualifications and specialties and proposals that identify that, but it is not a low bid based procurement.
Okay. Thank you. That's why I asked. I was a little confused. Doesn't take much. Thank you.
Dan Records, I saw you were getting ready to, or did I see your hand up?
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you to Jen and Mike and Nathan and Al for working together to put this together. So thank you.
So I feel the council would could entertain a motion tonight to proceed this, and maybe that would include dressing up some of the language there to sell us a little bit better. I understand that you're trying to get this thing going. Does the council feel comfortable in approving this RFP tonight in terms of what we've said and in terms of some of the comments quicker than 12 weeks, and also in terms of the language?
Pat, what did Pat want to say? She was up.
Oh, Pat, please.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to jump in and kind of piggyback a little bit on what Eileen described in terms of how we can kind of brighten this up a little bit. And I just kind of thinking about that, I think if we were able to highlight the fact that we do have pretty good industries here in Pullman, it's becoming more of a destination location for families as well as for older citizens staying here for a variety of different reasons. That could also lead to be something attractive to these people that would be marketing the area from an employment base. too. So I just wanted to throw that out. And yes, thank you to the four of you for getting this done in such a timely manner, and looking forward to moving it out there. Thank you.
Since you volunteer with the Pullman Regional Hospital Foundation, we could also say that we are one of the few critical access hospitals with a residency program approved, an accredited residency program. There's a lot of things we can say right now. Okay, so.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is it council's direction that we should remove I have under the budget that the project is not to exceed 10,000. Am I hearing that we should remove that so that it's more of an RFP without a requirement not to exceed 10,000?
Didn't we have a larger budget than that?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
Well, so we have a total budget within the tier 2. What was discussed prior was 25,000 to 50,000 for all services. So we didn't really have a portion for just an assessment.
I think if you have a decent marketing firm, they'll do the research and check our minutes, and they can see that we actually discussed that range in the last meeting. And if they do their research, they can probably stay within that particular budget. I mean, that's just a possibility. Anybody want to answer what Jen's concern was? You want to remove the 10,000?
You know, we talked about that a little bit, and we just kind of thought that was a good starting number just for the qualifications. But I'm gonna pull Mike in here for just a second, because I think he'll probably remember the numbers. He's the numbers guy, about kind of where we were going to start and that kind of thing from the last full meeting that we had.
Okay, Mike.
And you know, we started during the budget process with a $4,000 budget for this entire item. So we thought, you know, increasing that by 150% to get the ball rolling down the hill at 10,000 was certainly a good first bite, leaving us more dollars, especially with the American Rescue Plan dollars coming down to do the next step. And we think that, you know, since time is really of the essence, and we want to get these things back, dwelling a lot on this first part for higher dollars, we can certainly move into the second piece. So when Nathan, Al, and Jen and I were talking, that was a number that we felt really comfortable with. You know, bang for the buck type of a thing, I guess, is the best way to explain it, just on this first portion.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, Brandon, this wasn't like Laura said, the low bidder gets the job. We're going to pick the one that fits us for everything. So,
and Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I concur with what you know, Mike and Al have said. I think that this was a beginning point. We had all sat around and, you know, tossed this around for quite a while. And that was where we felt most comfortable with getting it started, getting the ball rolling as quick as possible. And I would like to mention, I know there's been some comments about, you know, really selling Pullman and, you know, increasing the language, you know, vibrant, so on and so forth. But I think really, and of course it's up to the council, this is an RFP, and it's giving the facts, and then the marketing is going to be the ones to say, okay, here's how we can market you. And so I think the facts were what was needed for this RFP, but yeah, that's my comment on both of those.
Okay, we'll go to Dan Records, and then maybe there'll be a motion here. So Dan.
I think I take kind of what Nathan says. That's kind of what I was thinking as well. Is the purpose of this is to have a consultant that's help us figure out how to market ourselves better. But in terms of being attractive to different marketing firms that might want to work with the city of Pullman, you know, some of the things, you know, you can talk about being a vibrant city, I think highlighting those types of things is something we can do in an RFP like this. Talking about things like that Pullman is on the precipice of a lot of action, and that we are one of the most diverse communities in Eastern Washington, and using language like that to attract kind of different types of firms, to give us more variety. Because if we're looking at the types of projects that firms want to work on, opening up the language to not just describing a small town in a college or small college town, having some words in there that is going to be come across searches that firms are doing for proposals and things. So including words like diverse or diversity, including words like growth potential and action-oriented or vibrancy, I think are important things to think about, because part of this is how are these firms getting notified, or how are they finding these RFPs? And some of them are doing searches, and they may have a set of certain criteria that they go through to look at before they'll even respond to these. And I think we need to think about that and how we write the RFP so that we get a good pool of diverse backgrounds and perspectives of marketing firms that we can choose the best one from. Because if we're just getting all the same type of firm, it limits our options in kind of how we make that decision once we get those applicants in.
Okay. Jen, do you feel you have enough direction from some of the comments that you've heard tonight? You can add a few more adjectives. We're the home of innovative companies too. I mean, we got to throw that line in there too. So,
Glenn,
yeah.
Pat had her hand up.
Thanks for keeping track of me, Al. Just a thought in terms of that monetary piece that we were talking about. Certainly, at the first blush, if we don't get firms that we're looking for because of that monetary constraint, we always have the option to put this back out to bid, right, or to RFP, right? So at a first go round, that may give us exactly that opportunity to see what we are looking at in terms of cost factors. Just a thought.
and a good one as usual. I'll have to keep looking at this side of my screen to make sure I don't miss you, Pat. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Al is keeping track of me. So
she's right underneath. She's right underneath me. So her hand is hitting me.
She's over to the left over there.
Well, and you're below me. So
okay. Mike Urban, I saw that you might have a comment.
Nope, just scratching my head.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Headphones are getting uncomfortable.
So do we have a motion then to go ahead with this RFP?
I'd move that we move forward. Nathan, did you have a question, or were you gonna? Okay, I'd move that we move forward with the RFP with some minor
word change,
whatever you want to call it, changes to the wording a little bit, but
and I'll go to Nathan
nothing structurally.
And Nathan.
Yeah.
All right. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much for that. We can now go to new business. I understand we have one person on the line for new business. Again, person has this Mario. I think that's Rob. You're going to bring that person on from the waiting room. We have so I have a note on a phone for Mario. Please state your name and your address, and then also you have 3 minutes. Okay. So Mario, you're now in the new business area.
Okay, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, we can. And again, you got 3 minutes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Mario Lupino, and I am currently a second-year PhD student of entomology studying pollinator health at WSU. I have lived in Pullman for 4 years and earned my Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Ecosystem Services with a minor in Sustainable Development from WSU in 2019. Today, I would like to talk to you about the beavers currently occupying the South Fork Palouse River near the community garden at Copel Farm. This family's range extends from the Pullman Village Center cinemas along Sunshine Creek down more than a mile towards the WSU Visitor Center. They have a single lodge which houses 2 adults, 6 kits or 1-year-olds and 6 juveniles or 2-year-olds annually. This family also maintains 4 to 5 dams along this 1-mile stretch and plays a crucial role in this river's ecosystem. Their dams slow water movement, increasing viable habitat for aquatic organisms in the area while filtering water. Dams also reduce damage downstream during floods and help keep the water table stable during dry periods. A high water table allows trees further from the stream to maintain access to fresh water during the hottest parts of the summer. This increased vegetation keeps our city looking vibrant and cools the surrounding areas as plants transpire or release water during photosynthesis. You may be familiar with this phenomenon when you walk under a tree during hot weather and feel water droplets falling on you. Concerns have been expressed for the trees along the edge of the river and for threat of flooding as a result of these dams. Beavers use their iron-reinforced teeth to cut down trees and shrubs to build their dams and the lodge in which they live. They prefer to chop down softwood trees like willows and strip them of their bark to eat the sugars within. Willow trees have the remarkable ability to regrow from their stumps when chopped down, and this bushy growth is ideal nesting habitat for birds. As someone who regularly walks this trail, I have been privy to seeing a multitude of species in this area. Goldfinch, American robins, swallows, kingfishers, great horned owls, and red-tailed hawks are all abundant in this area and depend on the river for the food and water it provides. I have even seen river otter playing on the beaver's main dam, and several species of fish depend on the habitat it creates. I have lived across the street from the beaver's lodge for the last year and a half. I regularly see people bird watching, playing in the creek, and even looking for the beavers themselves. As someone with watershed management training, I have seen no risk of flooding or felling of trees as a result of beaver activity, which would cause harm to humans. I ask that the council not remove these beavers and instead wrap protective coverings around trees deemed at risk of serious harm. I also ask that the city place educational signage around the beaver's main dam and around the trees with visible beaver chew, specifically in the city playfield, so the public may become better educated about beavers. This native keystone species plays a vital role in maintaining the health of our public spaces. They should be allowed to remain in their preferred habitat where people can continue to enjoy them and the species diversity they bring. If you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to email me at mario.lupino@wsu.edu. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mario. And again, we can refer this to our department. Dan, you saw your hand come up on that one. So,
yeah, I was just going to ask Kevin if we have any update yet on kind of what is the current status of the plans, or if that's still premature.
I've kind of been involved in this, but I think Mike's actually been taking more of a lead. We typically, in the Public Works Department, each fall, summer and fall, we sort of reconnoiter the various stream segments in Pullman. And if we see trees that are in danger of falling in the waterways that would create a potential flooding hazard, or maybe a willow has grown and blocked the creek, where the water would flow, we basically go in and trim those. But that's really the extent of what we have done in Public Works as far as the beavers go.
And Mike, you said you've had some conversation.
What I'd like to add is that I did send an update memo to council over the last week. I have no additional information at this time. I'm still working on some loose items with that work group internally, so I'll be able to brief the council in the future, but I'm not ready to comment now.
Okay, Nathan, that satisfy your question, or did you have something else to say?
No, I was just going to be mentioning, this is starting to be a little bit more of a hot topic. And so I know a few of us are keeping up with Mike regarding it, but thank you, Mario, for discussing it.
Okay. With that, we have come to the end of our business. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Moving second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? At 9:02.